Miss Caribelle Folkens. She's going to be doing a presentation on rabbits this in April for our April Youth Leadership Team meeting. So Caribelle, go ahead and start.
All right, so this is the basics on raising show quality rabbits. So there's the first thing you want to do is you want to be able to take good care of your rabbits. So starting on the left, we're going to go down. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that they have clean and fresh water 2 times a day. This is because algae and bacteria and gross things that can make our rabbits sick grow in that water, especially if your rabbits are kept outside. So you want to make sure that you clean that twice a day. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Our rabbits need a constant access to food. There are a lot of breeders who will say only feed a scoop in the morning and it has to be like a cup of feed. I believe that rabbits should have an open access to food so they are constantly eating and putting on weight. Weight comes in later and I will explain why. So your feed should not be older than 90 days. This is to keep it fresh and healthy. Um, if you look to the right, this is a feed tag. This will let you know what is in your feed and how old your feed is. These are usually located on the very bottom of the bag. So when you flip it over, depending on the feed, this is an idea of what it'll look like. This is a feed tag for horses, but it doesn't really change when you come to rabbit feed. Of course, if you have like pests or rodents get into that feed, you need to dispose of it immediately as we don't want our rabbits to contaminate. We don't want those pests to contaminate our rabbit feed as it can make them sick. And of course, I added it on there. Throw out moldy feed. Don't feed your rabbit stuff that's moldy or wet or mildewy. That can make them sick. The next point I'm going to cover is a handful of grass hay. Now, if you show bigger rabbits like cattle and goats, we typically feed them grass hay to keep their ruminants going. Similar to large animals, hay keeps rabbits' guts in extremely good condition. Again, a lot of people will say don't give grass hay to show rabbits. This is personal preference. I feel it's better for them and it can keep them healthier. Fruits and veggies. This is a topic that a lot of people would argue against me. Fruits and vegetables you need to keep on the low because they have a lot of sugar and that can cause health problems such as urine problems, high blood pressure problems, and in smaller animals, that tends to get worse quicker. And of course, that can help lead to excessive weight gain. So next we're going to talk about breeds. The reason we talk about breeds is because as of the ARBA standards, which is what most shows will go off of, the American Rabbit Breeders Association, there are 50 recognized breeds. However, only a handful are considered show meat quality. These would be your Californians, your New Zealands, and your Satins. A lot of people would throw in a cinnamon in there. I personally have never seen a cinnamon in a meat show before. Those are the main three you'll see. The majority of the time, you will see a Californian, which was on the very first slide I showed you. It has a white pelt with the black ears, the black feet, and the red eyes. Those are the most common meat rabbits. And when I say meat rabbits, understand these are raised for the purpose to consume. Rabbit is actually very healthy, throwing it out there. And then we go down to the breeding class. The breeding class is all of the rabbits. However, they all have different standards. If you want to look more into those standards, I would go to the ARBA website, which is arba.com. And there you can see the breakdown of those classes. This is the class that we get into, breeding classes, is we look at their pelt or their fur quality. All of the rabbit breeds are recognized and can be shown here. And you typically will find an open breeding show at specialized shows or like Houston. Houston has a big variety of open shows mixed in throughout their curricula. So, what are you looking for in your commercial breeding rabbit? As you see to the picture on the right, this gives a very good scale on what a rabbit should look like body-wise. So the very first rabbit on the upper left of this picture, it shows our body of depth. And I'll get into more of these in our next slide. The next picture to the right of that top one shows you its wide frame. And you typically want a really wide frame in a rabbit. And then, of course, that bottom one shows your full top line. So if you're showing a pen of 3, you would look for what is consistent among your rabbits. What is your hip line? Are they all the same meat firmness? Do they all weigh approximately the same? You want your rabbits to look as consistent as possible. When we get into consistency, this is where a lot of breeders will tell you do not mix litters of bunnies, because every litter of bunny, they look different. That's where you get into bone structure and meat setup. So you typically are looking for consistency. So here's your breakdown. So the top line, this is the highest peak on the back. This should be above the hips. And when I say the highest peak, you're typically looking for your rabbit to have a nice high peak. And when you look at a rabbit from its side profile, you will see where that peak is almost immediately. If your hindquarters like drop off of its butt, or it's bony around the hips or above the tail, you typically would cull that rabbit out and not show it, as it doesn't hold much meat value. So when you get into the width of the rabbit, we're talking from left to right. What is it from left foot to right foot? And this is where you want it to be nice and smooth. You want it to be full. The loin, which is from the shoulders to the hips, should feel wide as well. So when you run your hand over that rabbit, how wide does it feel? Are you holding a taco or are you holding a burger? That's kind of what we're looking for. The poor quality of rabbit would have very, very narrow shoulders over a very thin loin. And the loin is the ribs of the rabbit going over the stomach to the butt. Easiest way to explain that. And then last but not least, the depth. This is from the highest point of the rabbit to the table. This is where your peak comes in. You got to find that peak and find the bottom of the table. This is a very, very desirable trait in all breeding and meat shows. You want that middle point right at the hips. And this will show the amount of meat on the rabbit top to bottom. Am I getting a good amount of meat for this rabbit, or is it lacking in height meat-wise? So posing. This is probably the hardest thing you can do with a rabbit. On your left, it shows you where the peaks are. So if you can see my cursor, where this yellow line is, that is what we're looking for. Because if you follow it, right about here is the peak of this rabbit. This is an overposed rabbit, because its feet are way tucked in and its butt is way pushed under, and it doesn't look very comfortable. This is an underposed rabbit. As you can see, where its peak is way over here compared to where its feet are. And its butt just kind of slides off. When you look down at the correctly posed rabbit, the peak is right at the end of the feet. and its butt doesn't slip and it doesn't drop off instantly. And if you look over here where the face is, the eyes line up with the toes almost perfectly. So to do this, you want to put your rabbit on some kind of surface. A lot of people have show tables which have carpet on them so you can push it up. You're going to position the hind feet so they're directly below the hips, like in this third picture here. Because up here you can see the feet, how they're not under the hips, but here you can't see them at all because they're way under your hips. You want to have them ever slightly directly below the hips. What you're now going to do is you're going to place one hand, the majority of people will use their left hand for this, over the eyes with your thumb around their ears. This will keep them secure while you're doing what you need to do. With your other hand, usually the right hand, you're going to run your hand along the loin and gently tuck the rump of the rabbit. This is where people go wrong. We will try to push and squish the rabbit together. This is not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to get it to where our high peak is right in line with that hip line. I know I have overposed rabbits several times, and my judges have dinged me for it. So you want to make sure that you have it pushed ever so slightly just to where your rabbit is posed like this. And our weight classes. These are very breed specific. For my PowerPoint here, I did our weight classes for meat commercial rabbits. These are the usual weight classes you'll see if you were showing a Californian or a New Zealand at a market show, such as Fort Bend County or Houston or even Needville Youth Fair. So for these shows where you're showing at a pen of 3, these are called our pre-junior bunnies. These are our 3 months and under bunnies. For both bucks and does, you want to be in the range of 3.5 to 5.5 pounds. The majority of judges judging a pen of 3 rabbit would like to see your rabbits as close to 5.5 pounds as possible. Now, if you were going to show your rabbits in an open meat show, your junior does, these are 6 months and under, typically no older than 3 months, because that's when they would be considered a pre-doe, and that's when you would show them in your pen of 3. So typically they are 5.5 to 8.5 pounds. Again, judges would look for it more to be closer to 8.5. The same with the bucks. However, the bucks are slightly under the doe's weight class, and they are 5.5 to 8 pounds. Your intermediates are usually 6 months to 8 months. Now, in the past, I have had junior does who have met the intermediate weight class, and you can show them there technically. These does, you're going to have 8.5 to 9.5 pounds, where the bucks are going to be 8 to 9 pounds. As you can see, as we move up, there's a 0.5 pound difference. And then when you get into the senior class, these are your bunnies that are over 8 months old. Your ideal weights for these guys are going to be 8.5 to 10.5 pounds. But when we're looking at senior does, we really would like them to be at 9.5 pounds, as that extra pound could be more fat that we don't want to see in rabbits. The same with bucks. It's over 8 months with weights between 8 and 10 pounds, but ideally we want it to be 9. There's a few things I did not add on here I would like to talk about really fast. There are some simple disqualifications for show rabbits, and this would be missing toes, missing tail, if for some reason a missing ear or an eye. Those are automatically DQs. and your rabbit will not be able to show. And if it's a pen of 3 rabbits, your entire pen will be disqualified. Um, Smut. Smut is a black part of the pelt that you don't want to see in a rabbit. For Californians, this is very, very common. The majority of my breeding does and bucks outside have smuts, and that is not a show quality rabbit. If you have any other questions about today or this PowerPoint, please call the 4-H your 4-H advisor or the ag office, and we will get in contact with you and help you on your journey with showing rabbits. Thank you guys for your attention and your time today.